This is the Eden Project that well over 1 million people a year come to see. 35 acres of spectacular outdoor gardens. And the biomes, these iconic domed conservatories, the largest in the world, filled with exotic plants and what Eden claims to be the biggest jungle in captivity. But at Eden, you can also expect the unexpected. Yet some people, especially the horticultural team, are concerned that all this creativity, all this entertainment, all this fun might be a serious distraction from the main purpose of the Eden Project, to inspire a new awareness of our relationship with the natural world. The gardeners of Eden are afraid that it may be getting dangerously close to becoming a theme park.
Just bring Mickey Mouse in, that's all we need next.
Sometimes the themed events do damage to what we're trying to do. You know, physical damage and, you know, maybe damage to morale as well.
That's Eden. We're on a mission.
We've spent a year with privileged access to Eden, a decisive year which has exposed the tensions at the heart of the project.
The question is whether we have the nerve, whether we dare to actually...
We've witnessed a passionate argument over Eden's future, presided over and provoked by Eden's proudly maverick chief executive, Tim Smith.
I'm not into horticulture. My role isn't horticulture. My job is to fizz people into getting excited about horticulture, which is a very, very different activity. And to actually, the certainties that horticulturists want are exactly the sort of things I want to shake up.
It's August, high summer. The 1 million people a year who come to Eden need some looking after, and they need facilities. Eden has 3 restaurants and several short-stop cafes. On the busiest days, there's even a measure of crowd control, and still, that's not enough.
Check on 1 mushroom pasta, 1 pie, 2 kids pasta, 3 soup, 2 citrus tart, please. It gets to a stage where you cannot work any faster. You actually go in as fast as you can, flat out, and sometimes that's not enough.
The man who has to make certain that the Eden operation can cope with all this pressure and still generate a vital profit is the Director of Destination, Mark Jones.
We must have done about 10,500, 11,000 today.
Sometimes there's quite good stuff in here. This one, for example, on the 16th of August, had lovely food in your Zub Zub Cafe. However, the visit was spoilt by looking around for seats to sit. In some cases, you will know that on that particular day, because we are short of facilities, you really are struggling to cope. Don't forget the whole project was built based upon 750,000 visitors. And even last year, in our 3rd year, we had 1.4 million, so we had double.
Yet without the income generated by up to 10,000 visitors a day, the Eden Project can't survive. It may have received £100 million in lottery money and other public funds, but that's concentrated on its spectacular building programme. When it comes to day-to-day running costs, Eden is on its own. No big commercial sponsorship, no government funding. The Eden operations run from the foundation building, high on the rim above this transformed china clay pit. This is where the Eden management team work to reconcile their vision for a better world with the need to make a profit. But today, Tim Smith, Eden's co-founder and chief executive, is down on the site, the destination, where he's encouraging visitors to give a little practical help to the project as they arrive.
I'm taking part in what are called Tricky Days, and Tricky Days are all the staff who don't work on the front line have offered 16 days a year where they help out their colleagues on the front line to cover the days where there are more than expected people. And that's part of what we do to make sure that we're all in touch with what everybody's up to. So it doesn't cost you any extra.
Of course, Tim doesn't do this every day.
Would you consider that? Have a really good day. Thank you very much. I find being cut off and being up there sometimes very dispiriting, because the action's actually happening here. And that sense of, hey, you know, the army, the enemy's coming over the hill. Well, the visitors, obviously, they're not enemy. I just love that idea of having to gear up and prepare for what's going to happen. You know.
Good afternoon. Sorry to delay you. Please, welcome.
Mark has just the right kind of experience to run an efficient tourist destination. Half a lifetime in the hotel business, much of it in Africa, and most recently at Centre Parks.
The difficulty always with any leisure facility that's busy is the presentation. And I suppose with a hotel background, it's I tend to plump up cushions and straighten magazines. It's an occupational hazard, I think.
Eden isn't a conventional business, but a charitable trust. Yet the demands to make a profit are no less pressing. And to crack the financial whip even harder, the Eden project now has to pay off some £18 million in start-up loans.
If visitors do not come to Eden and we do not have any other source of income, we go down the tubes like anything else. We asked a lot of visitors what they thought were the main attributes of Eden. And we were both heartened and surprised to find that the one thing which was above all else was our independence. The fact that wherever you were, the public spaces hadn't been colonised by corporate sponsorship, and that our views were not brought to you courtesy of so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so.
The biggest crowds at Eden concentrate on the tropic and temperate biomes and the building that links them. But soon there'll be another iconic building to draw the public's attention. The Education Centre is scheduled to rise from these foundations and be ready for use in a year's time.
Is this the first beam? The very first beam?
Yeah.
Hey, you're catching the very first beam being screwed on. We wanted the building to be natural and to reflect symbolically a tree. The big issue was whether we were going to dare to be very purist and go for the roof that actually was a work of art, a complete work of art that did reflect and bend exactly as they wanted it to, or whether we were going to go for a cheaper option. And ultimately we said, look, we want this to be here in 400 years' time, let's do it right. Because we know that every time we make extreme decisions that are not based on cost, they're right. They're to do with, if you want the thing to look right, do it now, because in 10 years' time you'll be so upset that you didn't.
Grimshaw, the architects of the Education Centre, are the same team that created the extraordinary biomes, which have become the international emblem of Eden. Tim gave the Grimshaw team a similar brief: to impress. Jolyon Brewis is the lead architect.
The opportunity that we have at the Eden project to build really extraordinary buildings is tremendous, and it's an opportunity that doesn't come along very often. So that's tremendous. But they are a fairly idiosyncratic bunch of people. Love them though I do.
We're jokey about it, but we're all incredibly sensitive about wanting it to live up to our hype, because we eventually, when it's all finished, we don't want it to appear like hype at all. It's basically hype as in what we're doing is hyper, but not hyped.
Original architecture doesn't come easy. Everyone agreed that the building should be inspired by plants, but how to do it? Struggling to get the final design, the architects and engineers kept coming up with roof designs that were impossible to build.
We were aware that spiral forms, spiral geometries exist in various places in nature, and we were looking at those kind of influences. And when we started to try to make it work, we found we were running into problems. Structurally, we just simply couldn't make it work. And that's where the collaboration aspect of this project really started to pay dividends, because I was having conversations with Peter Randall Page, the sculptor, and he made a very pertinent comment. He just said to me, he said, "This is great, but you do realise that nature wouldn't have done it like this."
Peter Randall Page has been commissioned by Eden to make a massive stone sculpture that will eventually be lowered into the centre of the new building.
There's been a kind of journey through my work over the past 20 years or so, and I think the process began with me looking at nature. And over the years, I've got more and more interested in the kind of underlying principles that determine these forms, and those underlying principles turn out to have an awful lot to do with geometry and mathematics.
Peter showed the architects a way of interpreting a mathematical formula that can be found throughout plant life. This formula was discovered by the Renaissance mathematician Fibonacci, and it's nature's way of packing the maximum amount of material into the smallest possible space, which is why it's found on the seed heads of plants.
I mean, it is an incredibly beautiful pattern. I think it's an incredibly beautiful pattern, and of course it's mathematically absolutely fascinating as well.
Peter's insights helped the architects to create a roof based on the Fibonacci formula with double spirals and multiple curves that wasn't too heavy to support.
The building, as in bricks and mortar building, is a very powerful symbol for us, not only of our commitment to the education process, whatever that may be, but also it is the first time we will have a place where our attitude, if you like, to the world can be shown and properly showcased. This is going to be the first opportunity for us to have a stage on which we can perhaps illustrate our slightly sideways glance at the world and put over an optimistic viewpoint about what we could do to change it for the better.
Peter Whitbread-Abratat is one of the Eden Foundation team, people charged with the mission to change the world. Well, at the very least, to try and improve it a little. Peter's come to northern Thailand to assess the work of a partner organisation, Foru, which is trying to halt the remorseless destruction of the forests of Southeast Asia.
I'm incredibly excited to be here. It's a beautiful country with beautiful people, and you always get a surprise when you come to Thailand.
As soon as his feet touch the ground, he joins a Foru team up in the mountain forest above Chiang Mai. Foru is one of an increasing number of environmental organisations that Eden supports in a practical way. But Peter's also determined that the story of its work in re-establishing tropical forests should be shared with the visitors to Eden in new exhibits.
The whole point of Eden is about trying to make connections, trying to change perceptions, and the way you change people's perceptions is by taking them out of their everyday environment and plonking them into something new, which is exactly what we've experienced here, and it's exactly what we try and replicate, in a sense, at Eden for the visitor.
Now, many of the visitors to Eden might recognise a Ficus benjamina, a weeping fig. They might even have one at home, but not on this scale. Suddenly, Eden's humid tropics biome, the biggest conservatory in the world, doesn't seem so big after all. Peter and the Foru team gather seeds. It's the first stage of the reforestation programme that he's come to see in action. One day, these seeds might become 200-foot trees. At his Devon studio, the sculptor Peter Randall Page is preparing to carve his symbolic seed for the new education centre, an icon of Eden's ambition to encourage change. But Peter's seed will be made from 60 tonnes of granite.
What I've come up with, which is something more or less like this, is not based on any real seed, but is more to do with my idea of what the word seed means to us, if you like. And, you know, we like the idea that the chamber shape would actually echo the shape of the sculpture itself. So it's like a kind of seed pod, if you like, with the thing inside it. This is kind of person size, so it'll be a fairly unusual kind of space. There'll be the natural light coming from above.
But, and this is a big but, Peter's been searching for a suitable source of granite in Cornwall for more than a year. There's ideal stone in Germany, but the feeling at Eden is that the rock really ought to be Cornish. So now, Peter's come back to the Delank quarry on Bodmin Moor. More than a year ago, he and the quarrymen selected what looked like the perfect lump of granite in an ideal place, easy to access at the top of the quarry. But tests revealed that it would probably shatter when it was blasted from its bed. With all other Cornish options now closed, Peter looks deep into the quarry at the last possible bed of stone. But is it sound? And if it is, how in heaven's name can they get a 60-ton block up and out of this enormous hole in the ground?
Yeah, we've got the 3 metres along there. You can see there's a fault along here by my foot. So we've got our 3 metres that way, we've got at least 4 metres that way, and we've got 3 metres in the depth. So really, George is standing on the block at the moment.
Are you saying you've identified a stone or a seam that looks promising from which you cut the stone and then shape it?
The latter.
And what evidence is there that it's actually the stone?
They've quarried in that area before. They were quarrying there for the Princess Diana Memorial.
Where are the odds now? If we're coming to the chase today, it was supposed to be the day that we decided whether or not we were going to go with a foreign solution, whether we were going to look at Peter and look him in the eye and say, does your art need this piece to be singularly so big, or can we do 4 together like a Rubik Cube, or what? I think it is unacceptable to go to Germany if we have a Cornish option. Because that's part of the main selling proposition in the first place. I think other than that, it actually, to be honest, looks like artist vanity. In fact, if we had to go to Germany, I suspect that there might be a conversation about whether we wanted to do it. That's how I feel.
It's October now, a month after Tim's firm decision that the rock just has to be Cornish. Yet the rock is still firmly in its place. The quarrymen at Delank have decided on the softly approach, freeing the granite slice by slice. Now that could take many more weeks, if not months. It's looking less and less likely that Peter's seed sculpture will be ready for the opening of the education centre. There's some good news though. The building of the education centre is going really well. Swiss precision means that the wooden laminate beams that have been prefabricated in Basel are fitting together perfectly. The spiral roof is starting to look like the canopy of a giant tree. Education is already a vital part of Eden's activities, but education with an element of surprise. In the largest rainforest in captivity. The Eden way is to mix performance, entertainment and hands-on experience with a light dusting of facts.
40% of all life on this planet lives in the rainforest canopy. That's nearly half of all species are up there. And we still know almost nothing about them. 90% of them are still completely unknown to science.
This educational opportunity is Eden's first canopy season. Andrew Mitchell is a canopy scientist at Cambridge University.
The interface between life and the atmosphere is a very, very important thing to study because our lives depend on it. But if we only talk about it in negative terms, we won't inspire people with the awe and excitement like a place like Eden does. And when you look around at an environment like this, it creates that kind of awe and excitement in us. That little skin up there, those hexagons that you can see behind us, are rather like the skin of the planet that the canopy is. It's like our lining of our lungs. These very, very thin areas are what controls life on Earth, and that's why we have to explore the canopy.
In Thailand, the canopy is under severe threat. Thailand has lost 60% of its native forest in the past 40 years. Peter Whitbread-Abrutat prepares for a journey north from Chiang Mai to hill tribe country, where he hopes to witness the beginnings of a reversal to this tide of destruction. When he first arrives, Peter finds himself in a landscape stripped bare of trees. 40 years ago, this was deep primary forest. Then the Hmong hill people came to plant opium here. And when that was made impossible by the Thai authorities, they started to grow cabbages for export. All the tall trees were felled and the underbrush was burnt. But inevitably, within a few years, the thin forest soil was washed away and the water supply dried up. So the Hmong people were forced to move down into the valley. But a people who'd originally come to Thailand as refugees from the Vietnam War have become used to adapting to dramatic change. So now, the Hmong of Ban Masamai village protect what little forest they have left and watch out for fires that might come in from other areas.
So Neng, your village used to use fire to clear the forest. How has your relationship changed with fire?
อันนี้นี่พูดถึงรุ่นใหม่เลยอาจารย์ไม่ใช่รุ่นเก่าๆอย่างเมื่อก่อนแล้ว
Members of the village conservation club tell Peter that they now consider it the modern thing to do to avoid fire and to bring the forest back to life. Modern and essential to their survival. Foru now gives seedlings from its nursery to the people of Ban Masamai. Eden pays the wages of 3 of the Foru team. Within a year of planting seeds, there's measurable improvement. The first signs emerge of a revived forest. But tree growth in the Thai climate is so extraordinary that in places where Foru started this process 5 years ago, it's looking like forest already. And for every seed planted by Foru, birds and animals bring in 2 more. It's an inspiring and heartening story.
So I want to show you exactly how we get up into the trees using this gear. You'll see I've got 2 lines, always 2 lines, 1 working line, 1 safety line. So if my working line fails...
Back in the humid tropic biome, the canopy season continues to entertain and inform.
And down we come. Very simple.
But it also has greater ambitions.
That's how you get up and down the trees.
Scientists from around the world are invited to attend a week-long conference to be held in front of the public.
You spent your lives studying the living things.
Much to Eden's surprise, most of them have accepted the invitation.
It's their forest. We're there in their place.
Because they take off from the rainforest they have and move
Stealth
it.
bombers are built by governments that haven't even signed up to the bloody Kyoto Protocol. What hope have you got of persuading them?
Well, what's different about a meeting like this at Eden is that we're bringing together the people on 2 different sides of the fence, in a sense. We've got the climate people and the biodiversity people here talking together. This hardly ever happens. Bug people talk to bug people, tree people talk to tree people, climate people talk to climate people. It's quite rare in science to bring them all together. Plus, we have the public and we have some government. We had the Minister of Environment down here. This is a very important mix. I think the question Eden needs to ask itself is, where do they go next?
See scientists engaging in dialogue.
It could spread its voice way beyond Cornwall, way beyond the UK, to the outside world. But in the future, it could become a global centre for thinking and new ideas and bringing people like this together, because it's a very stimulating place to do it.
Unfortunately, even the most prestigious scientific conference can't help to pay off Eden's bank loan. So Tim Smith's come to Somerset House in London to do what Tim Smith does best: promote a brave new idea.
That's good. And smiling for me again. Okay.
The time of gifts season will be Eden's attempt to keep people coming to the destination throughout the winter. The main draw is a brand new ice rink.
I mean, if you're going to do something that's absolutely out of this world...
Ice rinks, it seems, are turning up all over the country as money-making exercises. But for Eden, of course, there has to be a whole lot more than an ice rink.
We thought, wouldn't it be great to build the most fantastical scene you've ever seen, where you can go and skate, but you're doing things that are active things, and you can go and actually dry off in a jungle. So what we're doing is we're having a festival for 2 months. We're going to have a lot of exhibits and exhibitions about what's going on, not only in our country, but abroad, projects where people are making a real difference. So people can actually really understand that you can, I know it's not very British to say it, but by individual action, you can change the world.
But some journalists, it seems, can resist even Tim Smith's powers of persuasion.
I know it sounds slushy, but that's what it's about. The thing is, it's not just fantastic ice skating. I mean, there's also going to be this extraordinary juxtaposition of, of fire, and also being able to dry off from being on the ice in a jungle.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's ever been done anywhere.
No.
Are you cynical about these things?
I have no opinion on anything like this. I'm just reporting what you're saying. Well, thanks a lot for talking.
Pleasure.
Good to meet you. Cheers.
Likewise.
It's late October, 3 weeks to the launch night for the Time of Gifts season. George Elworthy is the project director.
It was very interesting with the staff yesterday, and it certainly started them all talking, you know, my God, it's really happening, and got them going, which was great to see, and a bit of enthusiasm, you know, coming through. My God, we didn't realise quite the scale of it.
Within this timescale, erecting the ice rink can only be done using the quick turnaround techniques of the rock stadium. After all, Tim's previous life was in the pop music business. Keeping a wise and kindly eye on this and all of Tim's more ambitious schemes is a key consultant to Eden, a founder of Friends of the Earth, Richard Sandbrook.
The question of bringing in the punters, the reality is that the bottom line matters to that organisation, otherwise it can't survive. And we've seen enough Millennium-sponsored projects go wrong because there wasn't sufficient attention to the bottom line. But Eden does carry quite a heavy burden of debt, and that heavy burden of debt does soak up a lot of the available money which could be reinvested in wider and newer agendas.
The people who've come to Eden for the gardens and the biomes, and that's most of them, discover that they've arrived on a building site. Some of the visitors show the usual fascination for what builders get up to, but anyone seeking tranquility will be sorely disappointed. Yet Tim can see positive value in even this level of disruption.
I like chaos that keeps the rebel heart beating. I'm convinced that actually risk-taking and danger, if that's the right word, in terms of what we do, is absolutely critical in terms of our culture, that we become what we don't want to be when we're safe.
But there is a definite culture gap between the steady rhythms of Eden's green team and the frantic pace set by Tim. The horticultural curator of the outdoor areas, Tom Key, struggles to fill the gap.
I think the pace of change, I mean, some people are amazed at how quickly, if the decision's made, how quickly it can happen. With the development of the centre of the site, has all happened within 8 weeks, I suppose, you know. I mean, it's phenomenal, really, what can be achieved. I don't, you know, to me, sometimes that's too quick. I like to think about things a little bit more, but that's Eden. We're on a mission.
It's difficult to persuade gardeners that having your flower beds bashed about by the builders is good horticultural practice. Jane Knight is Eden's landscape architect.
In a way, it's really heartbreaking to see what's happened. When the landscape's finally settling down and things this summer have really started to take off, and then for something like this to come along and give it yet another setback.
Moving around pot plants does seem a bit of a waste of a horticultural diploma from Kew. Fiona Sanders is one of the outdoor supervisors.
These plans arrive from somewhere, and you'll get the rumour that you're going to be planting a whispering forest, which 6 months ago sounded wonderful. But it's now, you know, trickled down, and by the time it actually gets to you, then it's more like, you know, whispering wood.
This is not my ideal way of horticulture. It's just, you know, I call this sort of set dressing, really.
Yeah, we're not doing horticulture, I don't think, are we?
We're trying to create effect using plants, and it's a backdrop.
We've got an imperative that we've got to deliver, and, you know, to a certain extent, the planning just can't happen in the same time frame as you would normally allow it to. But I think under the circumstances, it's pretty miraculous what has been achieved so far. And, you know, looking at what the site looked like 2 months ago and what it looks like now, I think a miracle is about to happen.
Miracles, it seems, are happening all over the Eden site as the Time of Gifts launch day edges ever closer. Some members of the Green Team fear that all the sound, light and entertainment being planned for the Time of Gifts is part of Eden's steady progress towards becoming a theme park. Dina Gallick, the supervisor in the tropical biome, is one of them.
Well, just bring Mickey Mouse in, that's all we need next. That's what it feels like. I know there are positive parts to this, I hope, and I'm trying not to be negative, but I am actually very upset. The whole thing is upsetting me. When I left my last job, I was so glad to leave behind speakers, soundtrack, lights, cables, thinking, and then realizing that I was coming into this place where there was none of that. It was, now I'm like, oh my God, it's followed me. Even the same people. The man who did the sound, here he is again. It's like a nightmare.
The lighting electrician Simon Moss is only too aware that he's upsetting Dina and her colleagues on the green team.
I can understand their point of view, but everybody has a job to do, and our job's made. It is quite hard to run things because you obviously don't want to step on anyone's toes or anyone's plants for that matter. But to do it at this time of night is a lot easier for us because we get it in and then they worry about where we stood afterwards, rather than trying to run it in while they're worrying about where we're standing. I'll meet you.
I walked in Tuesday morning, burst into tears. That probably sounds a bit melodramatic, but I did. I came in and there were lights, cables, people stomping through the beds. It makes me feel ill, you know, just back and forth, back and forth. It's my biome just being trashed. For us, it means going from that integrity of Eden, we're about plants, we're about stories, to, wow, it's a sound and light show.
But as far as Tim's concerned, his critics at Eden are failing to see the bigger picture.
Horticulturists, like anybody else, bring a lot of baggage from their past with them about what they expect from horticulture. You know, it's all very well talking about the dirt under the fingernails elements of things that will take 30, 50, 100 years to develop, or we'll plant small plants because in a few years they will have grown. That's the blinkered vision of the horticulturist. I'm not into horticulture. My role isn't horticulture. My job is to fizz people into getting excited about horticulture, which is a very, very different activity. And actually, the certainties that horticulturists want are exactly the sort of things I want to shake up. Ultimately, the responsibility we have is to excite visitors into looking at the world in a different way so that when they leave, they've actually taken something away with them. And if they just want beauty and great horticulture, for God's sake, go to Wisley or Kew or somewhere else. That's not what Eden is about.
We're supposed to be sustainable. We're supposed to be about the environment. We're supposed to be about not being consumers. What can I say?
Freezing and lighting an ice rink will certainly consume a lot of energy.
We spent a lot of time doing analysis on, you know, how sustainable was it, because we didn't want to find ourselves shooting ourselves in the foot by doing something like this, and then people say, crikey, for an environmental project, you know, you're using up all this juice, and is that an appropriate way to go? It is a net gain in use to do this, obviously, but we traded that off that it wasn't so great that we felt it was obscene. And we felt that the trade-off of sharing the skating with a wide audience in return for showing them a lot of good projects around the world was worth it.
Sue Hill is Eden's artistic director. She's helping to coordinate the exhibits and events that will encourage visitors to reflect on good things throughout the time of gift season. Sue is also directly involved by making one of a dozen shrines that will be placed in the temperate biome. Her peep show shrine holds children's paintings of play in a park. The actual park is more than 1,000 miles away from Eden, in Podjeva, a small town in Kosovo. Sue visited Podjeva a few weeks before with Eden's landscape architect Jane Knight. Sue and Jane are working together on an Eden initiative to create a peace garden, a living memorial to the victims of the atrocities in Kosovo in the late 1990s. When Yugoslavia tore itself to pieces, Kosovo became a battleground for a conflict between Serbs and ethnic Albanians, a conflict characterized by appalling massacres of civilians and the displacement of whole communities. The wounds have yet to heal, and NATO forces still protect the Muslim Albanians and the Christian Serbs from each other. Sue and Jane visit a garden in Podjeva, where, in 1999, Serb militiamen massacred 14 people from 2 Muslim families, aged between 2 and 70.
These are the holes of bullets.
They had Kalashnikovs there.
Yeah.
And they just massacred nearly the whole group, and the children were left for dead. And then some other people came and found that there were 5 surviving children. And then the British Army entered Pristina and they found them and took care of them. And Salatin and his family were in the hills. All the 5 children who survived that day are now doing brilliantly in Manchester, aren't they? They're all doing really well. And so's Salatin. So's Salatin.
Pam Dawes, who runs a Manchester-based charity that has helped the children who survived the massacre, is collaborating with Eden on the creation of the Peace Park. This is just the kind of collaboration that'll be celebrated during the time of gifts season. Sue and Jane receive a simple gift from the garden.
What's their name?
The plans for the memorial park are ambitious, so serious funding will have to be found. For now, the children of Podieva are happy to clean up the site and to plant the tulip bulbs that have been brought from Eden by Jane, a token for a better future.
This whole project, the Manchester Peace Park project, has got a very direct relationship to Eden because of its beautiful, nuanced relationship between the idea of growing things and the idea of healing, and that there might be a way in which one helps the other. It's very beautiful and kind of unmarked, which is why I think they find it so special as well. It doesn't have the horrors in it. If you go further along this path, you confront some of the stuff that's been happening, because you come to a Serb cemetery that some Kosovans have desecrated. There's not a single grave standing, but here, it's like a woodland anywhere.
Sue has used materials from the abandoned church on the hill and the vandalised graveyard to make her shrine.
The kids were asked to think about what they would like to have in a peace park.
The pictures she's used were painted by children from Podieva.
So I have to watch my feet, isn't it? Because I've got the curator watching me. It's got to come all the way around.
Winter's here now, Eden's quiet time. In a few days, we'll discover whether the time of gifts season can induce enough people to fill the site with life.
Their eyes are twinkling at you, saying a likely tale or bloody hell, you know.
Meanwhile, some of the destination staff, that's the cooks, cleaners, stewards and the rest, are complaining that they're already overworked and understaffed. This extra burden is just too much for them.
So that you can see the whites of my eyes and I can see the whites of yours, and you can actually...
Tim holds meetings around the site to reassure all 500 staff at Eden that he's listening to what they have to say.
And what is in reality happening. So, ma'am.
I'm not one to speak in public, but feel that I would like to. Somebody just brought up something about the staffing that we're leaving. How are we going to manage?
There is a concern that we're terribly short-staffed. How are we going to manage? How do I answer that? Except to say that we are going to manage. I know that, Mark, I don't know whether you want to say anything about this, but I think you will find that we will not force you to be under a pressure where you will crack as we go through this. We're at a point of sort of coming to equilibrium at the moment. For reasons of the health of my colleagues, it is not of interest to me to see people suffering if we're really, really pinched. And I know we're trying to sort that out so that we can actually have the very best deployment of people. I'm sounding like an effing politician, aren't I? We don't want you to die under the pressure, and we will do our very best to sort it, because we don't want you to flag, okay?
No, it's not as bad as it looks. This is an exercise in which Eden's stewards learn to deal with an emergency on the ice rink. But the truth is, most of the stewards are still very tentative on the ice, and in a couple of days, it'll be their job to look after the public as they career around the rink. Now, that wasn't in the job description.
It's not Tim's job to think through the implications. I think Tim's role for us is inspirational leadership. Our job is to come along as the operative specialists, as it were, and pick up the details. And this whole enterprise has only succeeded thus far because we've gone to extraordinary lengths. Now, this is just another example of going to extraordinary lengths.
But ready or not, it's mid-November. Time for the official opening of the ice rink and the time of gift season. Judith Donovan from the National Lottery gets the honour of cutting the ribbon, understandably perhaps, as the National Lottery has donated some £56 million to Eden's building fund.
The Eden project, and I'm delighted to open its next, latest, sexiest bit.
It would be terrible if the first person on this went splat.
Wow, they're on. We're off.
No question, the ice rink is the big draw. But more than 3,000 people will have to come each day for this to be the financial success that Eden so badly needs. And then, when night falls, thoughts of the bottom line seem to drift away for a while, as Eden glows in the dark. Skating now looks like just one part of a much bigger event, an event with multiple moods. In the temperate biome, families listen by lamplight to moving stories from around the world.
Peace Park was unveiled, and it was of a small girl holding a giant paper crane above her head. But the story I want to tell you about tonight is about a small girl...
Suhil's shrine from Kosovo beams out its optimistic message into the night. Altogether, there are a dozen shrines, each telling a similar tale of how a garden has helped to heal the wounds of a fractured community.
The atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima just 1 mile from Sadako's home.
Tim is not so distracted by the mellow mood that he fails to watch over the money. Stephen Dunmore is another senior figure from the National Lottery, and he's already fallen on the ice once. Members of the Green Team have been volunteered as waiters and bar staff in the main restaurant. Any frustrations they may feel are lost in the general spirit of goodwill.
If it's not as tough as we thought, it's because we're better organised than we possibly could have hoped to be. We've been talking about it for weeks and weeks, and we got to the stage just pre-tonight where everybody just wanted to do it and get on with it, because there was... initially, when you talk about something like this, it goes to the, I can't believe you're asking me to do this, to, hey, that's a bit of a challenge, to, it's a bit of a challenge and we can't possibly do it, to, well, how do we organise to do it, to, well, let's now get on with it. And we're now at the let's get on with it stage.
By universal acclamation, the climax of the evening's events is the flame-lit procession in which everyone can take part. For Tim, friends and strangers coming together in procession expresses a view of the world that underlines all of Eden's ventures, that makes it so much more than a theme park.
It is about the power that is released in people through being around a fire and wanting to tell truth when the fire is blazing in a night. It is about getting in touch with the primitive. By primitive, I mean the very basic things that we have in common.
3 nights a week, for 3 months, this fabulous procession of lights will snake its way through Eden.
if Eden becomes, like I hope it does, it will have a very powerful spiritual, with a small s, not religious, but a spiritual force to it, which will make people come here and feel inspired to not only be relaxed and open to lots of things, but will make them think a lot, feel a lot. I think the biggest battle is to create moments where it's okay to be idealistic and it's not defined as being naive.
Visitors have been invited to write their wishes on paper, and these wishes are tied to the giant floats to be carried off into the night. As the last firework fades and the public leave, it's time for more noise and a thank you party for the staff. Several of the green team choose to stay away from the party, but the general mood is, blimey, we've done it.
Just fantastic thanks to the most incredible team you could ever wish to work with, and the most incredible audience that you could ever wish to gather in one place. Yeah. It's been a privilege to be here. Thank you to my team, the Eden team. I don't think I've ever felt this proud in my life, and it's just great. Thank you.
As for the bottom line, the income from the 3 months of the time of gift season will exceed the most optimistic forecasts. And among the gardeners, emotions start to die down, and it's back to the business of plants. A grey morning in late November. The Delank Quarry on Bodmin Moor. The day when the rock for Peter Randall Page's sculpture will be blasted free from its bed. It's 3 months since the decision to go for this lump of granite at all costs. But Tim, as ever, looks on the bright side.
Isn't it exciting? It's lovely coming here and realising that the decision we took to get a Cornish stone, to burn our bridges and not even think of a German stone as being an alternative, so that everybody then got focused on the one thing. That was actually the moment we needed. And when you come here and you see, you know, it's in a Cornish quarry, everybody who's quarrying it feels excited about it, you can see it's got some meaning to it, and it'll have meaning in hundreds of years' time rather than something that was just bought off the shelf. Yeah, is it about to happen now?
Such a mournful sound.
Please God, there's no crack opens up right the way down the middle. That was... God. These guys are good, aren't they?
The rock is free, but has it split?
Don't know yet.
As Tim goes down to look for himself, the quarrymen can find no obvious damage. But as far as Tim's concerned, the news is good already.
Thanks a lot.
January. Cornwall's already showing confident signs of spring. Things are impressively close to schedule at the education centre. The building's starting to settle itself into the landscape. But it looks increasingly unlikely that the seed sculpture will be in place for the opening. Peter Randall Page has said all along it'll take him 9 months of carving, and there's still a lot of prep work to be done. In other parts of Eden, it's all change. Mark Jones, the destination director, has resigned, provoking a flurry of discussion around the site. Mark's successor is George Elworthy, who's been with Eden from the beginning.
Good morning.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. help you today?
The word going around is that Mark Jones was too much of a company man for Tim's idea of Eden. Mark's business-like approach clashing with Tim's vision of one big happy family, or even, as he sees it, a city-state.
When we first commenced, we were much smaller and we were much tighter as a team. And whilst you appreciate, you know, that time has passed, it's a much bigger place. But I do feel as we have to bring everyone together much more than we have been. It's often been voiced as a sense of ivory tower, remoteness. Tim's brief to me was, he said, I just want you to be me on site.
Some people, though, will definitely miss Mark.
He was a good communicator. I think he understood the problems we are having with the big themed events that go on here, and the fact that they do impinge on some of the horticulture that we're trying to do. Sometimes the themed events do damage to what we're trying to do, you know, physical damage, and, you know, maybe damage to morale as well, horticulturally. And he talked about this place in terms of, you know, the crown jewels. You know, you've got to look after your crown jewels. You've got to present them well to the public.
It is essential for me to like everybody I work with, which is not a very professional thing if you were doing an MBA. You've employed people on their merits and their CVs. Bugger that for a game of darts. If I'm going to get out of bed in the morning to do something like this, I want to walk through that door really looking forward to seeing everybody that's there. And you know what? I have the tremendous privilege of that being so.
At the Eden Foundation building, where the creative and management teams generate the next big idea, and the next, and the next, Tim holds forth on his highly personal approach to running a successful business.
People sort of build on the myth of success is the bullshit that goes behind it, because the difference between success and failure is, at most points, about a fag paper thick.
His audience consists of senior managers from big corporations, banks, BT, that kind of thing.
There are a number of people who are not particularly good at the job you've hired them to do, but when they walk into a room, everybody just feels great. They just got that kind of friendly character. And companies that don't have people like that are actually so much the poorer.
There's a very difficult management style that Eden has decided to adopt, which is sort of, well, to use jargon, you could say matrix management, horizontal management. There's a great danger when organizations try to be very horizontal that they actually finish up being dictatorships. Because there isn't a structured hierarchy, one or two people begin to dominate agendas, and there isn't any check and balance in the organization to take care of that. I don't think that's necessarily the case at Eden, but the organisation needs to be aware of the fact that it could have people who very quickly find themselves outside where they think it is at, and therefore become discontent.
But perhaps Tim's about to release his strong grip on the Eden operation anyway. His new focus is the rim of the site. Here, he intends to convert abandoned farm buildings into a centre where new ideas and new solutions to global problems can be explored.
Eden has this wonderful convening power. It can bring people to it. It has shown that by getting a joined-up way of doing things, you can get things done very rapidly and in a very positive economic way. So it's got the power of demonstration, the power of convening. And I believe that it also got, therefore, with partners, the intellectual muscle to start to develop some real solutions to some real dilemmas.
In 12 months' time, I do not want to be worrying about, other than in a broad scale, about what we're doing in the destination on a day-to-day basis. If I was being really blunt, what's going on in my head right now is that I want to drive us relentlessly to getting on the ground the destination, the Eden that I believe we could be really happy with. I want to then move on, stop casting a long shadow over the destination, and move on to hosting conversations that might just go somewhere.
Our year at Eden has turned full circle. The education centre, now called the Core, is nearing completion, with a coat of copper giving a final touch. The exhibits will soon be moved in, except, of course, Peter Randall Page's granite seed, the symbol of Eden's aspiration to influence the world, and also its determination to stick to its guns. A few miles away, on Bodmin Moor, the rock is still being worked on. This isn't Peter Randall Page, by the way, but an assistant getting the stone ready for carving. In our year at Eden, we came across another impressive symbol of its desire to improve things. Small, but significant. When Peter Whitbread Abrutat visited the village of Ban Masamai, he donated some binoculars to the local school.
Oh, there's a bird.
Most mornings, the children would attack the birds with catapults. But now, thanks to Eden, they've found new ways of starting the day.
You'll talk to different people at the Eden Project who will give you different ideas about what they think the most important thing the project can do is. And for me, the absolute bottom line is to find ways to encourage people and tickle them and entertain them and shock them into engaging with things. Not to preach at people, but to illuminate stuff. Revelation isn't often learning something new. It's mostly recognising something or understanding something that you already know.
Back at the destination, there's one more surprise to come. Perhaps Eden's most dramatic intervention in this eventful year is the decision to fill the gap in the Live 8 series of concerts. To realise that this event, focused on Africa, just had to feature the best of African music. So, with the usual impossible deadline, Tim Smith picked up the phone, used his old music business contacts, and made a concert happen.
The response is so good, and it's so much fun to actually phone people up and you ask them for something, and provided they can do it, they generally do. And I think they get a lot of pleasure out of saying yes. And we sure as hell get a lot of pleasure out of them saying yes. And it creates a kind of magic. It really makes you think that almost anything is possible.
This is a crucial event in Eden's growth as a player on the world stage. The actual stage is the very ice rink that's been causing so much controversy. Perhaps, in the end, Eden's growing pains have been worth it.